So what's up guys, my name is Andrew from Motorcycles Off-Road. In this video, this is going to be a full complete review of the Tusk Dsport tires front and rear on many different types of terrain. But before we get into the video, there's a quick thing I want to announce. I want to say thank you to my patrons. These guys are awesome. They're supporting the channel and upgrades for other projects and motorcycles. And if you'd like to check out the Patreon, I have two new series started on the Patreon. One is how to make YouTube videos for motorcycle vlogs, recording, editing, etc., and how to capture pretty decent footage that people will most likely enjoy. And next is my KDX200 build series, as we do piece by piece. Also, any tires I reference in this video will be in my Amazon store. The link is pinned below. Now let's get into the video, and I thank you guys for listening and for all your support. Okay, so let's break this down. The Dsport tires, they're definitely intriguing, and they're definitely something different than other tires I reviewed, like the heavyweight contender Dunlop D606. By the way, if you're looking for the D606 and more information for that, I did a full review on that tire, and I threw some other tires in there. I'll pin that in the first comment below. But there is something to be said that the D-Sports are so inexpensive, it would be amazing if these are great tires overall. So they're definitely worth looking at, right? So in this video, my goal is to give you a full breakdown of my experiences with this tire to help you make a more informed decision for which tire is right for you. So if you're new here and you find value in this video, I ask that you subscribe and help us reach that goal of 20,000 subscribers within the first 2 years of having the channel. And I've tested these tires in multiple different terrains. I primarily ride my motorcycles off-road, but we've done everything from mountains to clay and mud, sand, and even road, of course. But obviously, if you're looking for a straight road tire, you're definitely not looking at the D-Sports. This lug pattern is pretty aggressive. But to be short, if I was going to say, if you want to get a lot of performance off-road out of these tires, you have to run them real low. I mean low. I'll illustrate that point further in the video, but these tires have a very hard carcass. So I think the best way to move forward in this video is to break it down separately on each terrain that I've tried it on and let you guys judge on what you primarily ride to maybe see if the tire will work for you. So firstly, let's talk about off-road and mud. The short of it is, these tires are pretty good in the mud. I took these tires through the worst mud you could find. This is greasy mud from the bottom of a river that was dredged out. Thick and sticky. They would cake up any tires. They did get caked up, as any tires would, but I would say they did pretty well. In my area, there's places to ride where this is the run-of-the-mill mud, so I have a lot of experience of riding through this type of terrain, and I would say they cleared themselves pretty well. I mean, this is the kind of mud that if you put your foot down, it sticks to the bottom of your boot, to when you put your boot on the foot peg, there's no contact on the foot peg at all. It feels like you're actually standing on a mountain of dirt, because these are stuck to your boot, and you gotta scrape it off your boot just to get good contact with the foot peg. So yeah, the fact that these tires did pretty good in this terrain, that's a definite plus. So you're probably thinking, okay, well Andrew, I guess they're good off-road, right? Well, not exactly. So these type of off-road situations are a small percentage that you'll actually run into when you take your bike off-road a lot. But how about harder stuff like rocks and roots? These tires have an extremely hard compound, leading to very slippery situations on hard rocks and roots and slick surfaces. In fact, I was at a dual sport event a couple weeks ago and I actually did a video on this where I was on the hero section and the bike just slid out from underneath me on a root or a stick and it bent my brake lever all the way up. Kind of a funny video, you can check that out if you want, but I do not feel that would have happened if I would have ran something more aggressive, or let's be clear, something more soft, like some of the Michelin offerings, or like a Kenda Trackmaster 2, for example. In fact, let's look at this side by side from my Michelin AC10, and you can see how much softer the compound is with the same amount of force, and how much flex you actually can get out of the lugs. The D-Sports are hard as f***. Now, there is some advantages. You are less likely to get a sidewall tear. You're less likely to get a pinch flat, but you're also less likely to be malleable and form around obstacles to give you the correct amount of traction without the bike searching for traction from left to right. Now let's talk about off-road in the sand, something I ride a lot. So normally I run about 10 to 12 psi in the sand. On a tire like the D606 or the Michelin offering, this is great. Good contact patch, great traction overall, but the D-Sport, I ran 10 psi, and a tire on hard surfaces, barely had any contact patch, and on soft surfaces, it just dug right in. And this is particularly bad in the front, when you're trying to control your bike in sand. In this terrain, my riding buddy for the day said the track I was leaving behind looked like a mountain bike track. Probably no point of the tire was making contact with the terrain, there was no flex, no deformation of the tire whatsoever. When we got back to camp, I discovered that I had to go down to 7 psi on these tires to form the same contact patch or malleability that the D606 was sitting at on his bike at 12 to 14 psi. Now for a lot of people that's not an option. You just simply can't run that low psi. Luckily I run a tubeless system in the rear for reduced weight and I'm able to go as low as I want. But at 7 psi, these tires are much better in the sand and the result speaks for themselves. Let's move on to road. Gravel roads, you'd be fine. Harder surfaces, I do not recommend these tires. They're not bad, but I can illustrate this point by showing you how much of rubber is actually meeting the ground. If you take a flat surface and you put it on this tire, you can see that at a road PSI, you're barely touching the ground. And this to me is kind of scary. If you're going around a bend, you definitely can't lean the bike. If you hit anything wet, slimy, sandy on top of the blacktop surface coupled with the G-forces pushing you left or right on a turn, you're probably going to slide out. Now that being said, the bonuses of such a hard tire is you're probably going to get 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it. I put 2,000 miles on the front and it looks pretty new, and 1,000 miles on the rear, and I can't discern the difference between when I first put it on to now. So the moral of the story, are they worth buying and who are they for? Well, I can tell you they're a lot better than most stock tires on most dual sports off-road. They're also very inexpensive, they're rugged, but that also comes with they're very hard to mount. They'll be hard to mount out in the trail with small miniature spoons, but it's definitely possible. I would say if you're mostly riding heavy off-road, single track, stuff like that, these are not the tires for you. I would say if you want a tire that you're only going to have to put on and you're not going to have to change for a long time, and you're not afraid to run them low, you're hitting gravel roads, stuff like that, these are a good tire. So it's really all about what your use case and scenario like with most tires, but once again, the price just makes them very tempting. If I was going to do it again and I was going to run these tires, I'm fine with the rear, and I'm fine that I have tubeless and I can run the rear down nice and low. Maybe I should experiment with even lower PSI on single trail, but in the front, I don't think I would recommend them. I don't like the front at all. At a decent PSI, they feel a bit washy, they're terrible in the sand, which once again, I have a bias because I ride that a lot. I would probably run a higher end like a Pirelli or a Michelin up front, and then maybe look at the D Sport in the back, since also your fronts wear so much slower, you're going to get so many more miles out of a higher end, softer front. And when your rear washes out, that's not that bad. If your front washes out, that's very unmanageable. So that's my conclusion. I'd buy a high-end tire up front at least and suffer the consequences of switching it out every 2,000, 3,000 miles. And maybe if you want to run this tire, run it in the rear, run it at a lower PSI, and you'll still get the same amount, 2,000 or 3,000 miles out of it, I'm sure. Well, that will conclude the review. I hope you guys found it useful, and I do hope it gives you value to understand exactly whether you should use these tires or not. The thing is, there's no clear-cut answer because everybody's scenario is different. So for you, if you look at each section and decide which one you would utilize in your area and how you want to use these tires, that'll ultimately decide whether or not they're worth it. I'll tell you, for the price, you can almost not beat them. They're pretty great. And they also look really good too. And as I said, if you want any of these tires talked about in the video, you can check out my Amazon link pinned below, or check out the Patreon for all the free content there, or the 2 new series that I'm starting. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe out there. If you're riding motorcycles, believe me, you have my respect. We're a small group and you guys are awesome. Enjoy the rest of your day.